a Midnight Waffles podcast.
This is BattleStations, a podcast about the Columbus Destroyers and the Arena Football League. I'm Frank Walker. We are 1 week from training camp. Things are starting to get exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I know that Coach Salk tweeted out just a little bit ago earlier tonight that players are arriving on Friday. I think the plan is to get everybody settled over the weekend and start work fresh on Monday. I'm excited. You should be excited. We've got just a packed show for you today, so we're going to start off with our interview.
And now on the BattleStations podcast, we have got Mr. Coffee Jones. How are you doing today, sir?
I am great. How are you? I'm happy the weather's starting to warm up, especially out here on the East Coast.
Yeah, we got some sunshine in Ohio today, so I can't complain too much. All right, so one of the things I've been wanting to do with our show here is just the fans in Ohio who have been away from arena football for a few years, trying to get them back acclimated into the game there. And as someone who's been around the soul and been around arena football for a while and real knowledgeable about it, what do you see as the biggest change that's been happening these last few years between, I'm not sure if you were around at the last time the Destroyers were in place or not, but what have you seen as the biggest changes over the last few years here?
Well, I remember, I started in the arena football landscape in 2007, playing Arena 2 football with the Louisville Fire, and just looking up to the guys that, we've had guys that have moved up to Columbus and different areas, and different arena teams. And the structure overall of the league from a financial standpoint, one of the biggest things I've learned being around Jaws and John Adams, the guys that are kind of running the league now, Ted Leonsis, just understanding the business of sports, the business of arena football, and the entire business model has kind of been flipped upside down. You've seen, obviously, the 2009 season where everybody kind of took a year off at the Arena 1 level. They reconstructed things financially, and even going back to, a year or two ago, they had a new CBA deal with the Players Union. The league kind of shrunk down to 4 teams, and it seemed like it was free-falling for a good while there. But in the beauty of it is, there's always a blessing. There's that rose that grows through the concrete. When all these different ownership groups in different cities and markets kind of fall by the wayside and take a step back because financially it wasn't working, 2 groups kind of took hold of the league and kept it alive, kept that pulse alive, and now it's growing. And obviously one group being with Jaws and the Philadelphia Soul ownership group that they're involved with, and they have the passion for the league. They've been in it since 2004 with Bon Jovi back in the day when things were rocking in Philadelphia in the height and the heyday of the Arena Football League up into 2007, 2008. And the other group is Monumental Sports, Ted Leonsis' group from Washington, D.C. They own the Capitals, the Stanley Cup champions, the Mystics, the Washington Wizards. So when Ted Leonsis and Jaws come together, Jaws has the real vision of the sports. Monumental Sports has a digital innovation in sports gaming and sports production, broadcasting, streaming that nobody has really seen in this game. So you got 2 different platforms, 2 different mindsets. You got a financial backing. You talk about the group, the Hearst Foundation, the family up in Albany. Now you've got some financial backing, some digital innovations, and a passion and an understanding of this game. Those 3 things combined, it was kind of like a slingshot, and at the end of the day, we got back as far as we could. Now we've let that slingshot go, and it's starting to take off. You go from 4 teams to 6. They got a plan to go from 6 to 10 or 12 next year, and now you're going to see the real emergence of a sustainable, one of the longest sustainable football league in North America, in the U.S., other than the NFL, in the Arena Football League.
Sounds like Columbus is getting back on this just for the right time. Then, from how you're describing it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, let's get into some real football talk at this point, just in terms of things. And as someone who's watched the game for years and has a better sense of it than a lot of fans do, when you've been watching the free agent signings and what's been going on, what was kind of the biggest surprises to you as far as, this guy went there, or this guy went there or stayed where he was? What's been a surprise?
I think not really a surprise. Not much surprises me. Obviously, a lot of people that do know of me, I've played, with half of the players that are still in the league. I've played for damn near all the coaches or against them. So a lot of people know me. I have a lot of relationships. in management and front office and ownership, obviously, and from the player level. So when guys are already thinking about signing, they call me. I mean, I've been talking to guys since I've retired in 2014. After that season, have talked to me about going to Philly, going to Jacksonville, going to, all these different markets and what their mind process, goes through, life after football, housing, whatever is their recruiting pitch. I kind of give them the basic, what they could find in Philadelphia. If they asked me about it when I was in Cleveland, what they would find in Cleveland. So I kind of had an idea of where guys were thinking about going. The guys that did sign, I've talked to them in the off season, whether they were going back to their old team or whether they're, testing free agency. So I kind of knew, some guys were looking to test the market and move to a different team. So nobody really surprised me, but I do know just obviously the monumental piece of the pie was Randy Hippert. He was he's the MVP quarterback. He played in the last 2 Arena Bowls. And for him to think about leaving Baltimore where they had, a hell of a run to go from what they did in 2017 to last year on the doorsteps of a championship, that was a big piece. And not just because your quarterback is obviously, Arena football is the most important player on the field. They get paid the most money. They're the high-profile guys. But I knew for a fact the recruiting element of a guy like Randy Hippert was going to be big for whatever team he landed with. And for him to come to a team like Atlantic City that is an expansion franchise is going to be building their roster from scratch, that was a big piece because I knew for a fact I had talked to a couple of different players around the league that said they were waiting on their free agent decision based on who the quarterbacks were going to be in the new teams like Columbus and like Atlantic City. So a guy like Randy Hibbert, you're going to see some guys. I've just seen Cornelius Lewis and some other players that have been around him in the Tampa area. They're going to start to sign and follow these guys. Just like the NFL, the NBA, guys want to play with each other. It's about winning, but it's about being able to play with people that you trust and that are like family to you. And that big piece in Atlantic City is going to attract some other players.
All right. And for the fans of Columbus, as we're going to be getting used to our players and our team and watching them, we've obviously they've got the big name being Donovan Morgan as far as coming out of retirement there. If you were talking about the landscape of the league, what are 5 players that Destroyers fans should try and get to know as far as these are the guys who pop out on highlights, these are the guys that are going to be really kind of affecting games in your mind?
Well, you got to start with Donovan Morgan. Like I said, he was a big name free agent that you guys pick up in the off season. I think he's a future Hall of Famer in this league. I'm glad to see him back. I know some people that talk to him about coaching, because he's got a brilliant mind. He's been a 2,000-yard receiver. He was the 2008 AFL Rookie of the Year. So he's done it all and seen it all in this league and played from top to bottom on some of the best offenses and some of the offenses that have struggled where he was kind of the only piece trying to carry that team. So he's a guy that's coming back and he's going to be hungry. That's the biggest key right now. Donovan Morgan is hungry again, and I've always talked about him. We've joked about it on my podcast and the Coffee House to say he's such a talented receiver, but you don't know what you're always going to get from Donovan Morgan. And it seems like you would see when he was going to get the ball or when he wasn't, because when he's going deep, you can see he's into that 4-4 stride, he's opening up, and he's running downhill. When he's not, or maybe it's a run play, doesn't have that same twitch the last time we did see him. Now, with this guy being hungry, I've watched him train. His slogan is, "I don't need your motivation." You see him on Instagram and Twitter. He's back to work. He's never lost a step in his fitness and his physique. So you're going to get a player that's going to be physically ready. Mentally, I think he's hungry again, and I think that's the guy that you're going to have to watch out for, that whoever you have throwing him the football, you get it in the vicinity. You've seen him all over the ESPN highlights and the stuff that he could do before the catch and after the catch. That's a phenomenal talent that you're going to be able to base your offense around in any given offense. Obviously Matt Salk, I've played for Salk at the Arena 2 level in Louisville. I know what he can do. He can come in there and light it up, so he knows the game, and he'll be able to develop a quarterback. And that's one thing I'm interested to see, who they get under center and who's going to be able to take a step back for the broad landscape of the league, who's going to be able to develop the next young quarterback to step into. You got the pillars of the league right now with, Randy Hippert, Dan Raudabaugh, Tommy Grady, Arvell Nelson. Those 4 guys are kind of solidified their spot with MVPs or championships. Who's going to be able to develop that next guy? Because, hey, those guys are all over, 29, 30 years old. They got families that they have to take care of. who's to say they don't end up with a nice paying job off the field? And they hang up their cleats and decide to retire. Who's going to be able to sustain for the next 4 to 5 years? This league starts to grow and be able to develop another young quarterback in this league.
All right. And if so, when Destroyers fans, if they're planning out their season, planning out where to go, and I know with the AFL, a big thing is trying to get to some of these road games. Is there 1 or 2 cities that you think you should make a point to try and get to during the season there?
Well, you'll hear it soon enough. By the end of the month of May, you'll hear enough of the guys talking. I know you follow all the guys, the players, all have their social media, and you'll be able to follow anybody that comes to Atlantic City. And I'll just say that because I'm in the organization and I'll be working with them and doing broadcasting as well for them. But I've been out in Philly enough that I've taken vacations and trips to Atlantic City, the Maxwell Awards. Jaws has a celebrity golf tournament down there. I've got some friends at Ocean Resort Casino, even before they became the partner of the Atlantic City team, the hotel sponsors. That's where the team will stay at, which I thought was a phenomenal partnership deal with Ocean Resort Casino. You're going to love it. And pretty soon, don't be surprised, within the next couple of years, if they start to move back to that old 2013 like we did with the Soul, Arena Bowl being a set location, a neutral site Arena Bowl, and I think Atlantic City would be the perfect destination in the future coming years for a spot like that. Listen, if there's any destination you want to come to a road game for Columbus fans, you got to get to Atlantic City. It's going to be phenomenal. The hotel, the boardwalk, it's summertime, so it's warming up. You're going to love it. I'm telling you, every play, you'll hear it as soon as the players come back from their first trip there, they'll be raving about, I can't wait to go back to Atlantic City. Can we put them on the schedule 3 or 4 times instead of going to Baltimore or somewhere? No offense to Baltimore, but you'll love it there in Atlantic City.
And it just occurred to me while I was talking with you, you said you spent time in Louisville. Did you have any overlap with the Destroyers coach Matt Salk when he was there?
Yeah, Salk. I played blocks with Salk for him. Joel Steele was our quarterback, me, Tiger Jones. We had a bunch of guys, Demetrius Forney that played, Corey Payne, guys that went on and kept playing football. And we had some quarterback injuries early on in the season. I remember about early in the season, maybe week 3 or week 4, we go down, I believe it was Birmingham, to play a game. And Salk was our quarterback. We finally talked because he was coaching and helping out as kind of a consultant. He was working. He had a pretty good job down there. And our coaches were kind of begging him to come back. And I was like, I had heard his name, but I had never seen him play. And we get in the game. And I always joke with Tiger Jones, who, is my cousin. He's a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest receivers ever played this game. And I said, Salk was the guy that kind of, Tiger really exploded on the scene because we had struggled for a half and Salk came in the game. And before you know it, I mean, maybe out of the next 5 plays, we throw 3 touchdowns. Salk is just bang, 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 down the field, choice route. He's making throws. And this is the funny part to me. He was always a quiet guy. You see him, he's got his glasses on. He looks like your IT guy for an office building. And he gets on the field, and he's talking trash to DBs. And I'm like, I like this guy. Like, I'm backing him up. That's fiery like me. And he's talking trash, so you better shut your mouth. Watch what I'm going to do with this ball. And he's throwing it all over touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. 2, 3 play drives, and I'm like, this guy's the real deal. And he only did it for a couple games until Steele came back, but that was enough for me to say, this guy is legit. And obviously his coaching career has been able to explain that. He's coached MVPs. He's been around the league. I'm happy to see him get his opportunity in Columbus. There's going to be some exciting things, especially offensively. And with a guy like Dominique Jones running your personnel, your football ops, he's building a defense and personnel-wise. You start with a middle guy like Varma Sonny. He's been my favorite guy in the league to watch for many years, because I've seen him back in Portland in his days, to be at his stature, the way he would play tough, up against a guy like Donovan Morgan and Tiger and Joe Hill. He'd give up 6, 7 inches and 30, 40 pounds in physique, but Varma Sonny would not back down to anybody. There's no secret why he's an all-arena caliber DB. He's going to be leading up your defense. You got Donovan Morgan on the other side. You guys have 2 guys, 2 leaders, 2 veterans that you could build a franchise around for a couple years to come.
Well, I don't think there's a better way to end than that. So thank you very much for your time today, Mr. Jones, and we appreciate it. And hey, hopefully we run into you maybe in Atlantic City. We'll see. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so that was some awesome information there from Coffee Jones, one of the most knowledgeable guys around arena football when it comes to both the business and the game itself on the field. That was fun. I enjoyed it. That conversation. The one tidbit out of there that I found really interesting was he threw out this idea. For those of you who don't remember well, arena football for a long time did destination arena bowls in the same way the NFL does different places, except arena football tended to place them in one or two places, either Las Vegas or New Orleans. The intent being trying to make it a big atmosphere, trying to have like an event, a destination event, and they would do it in cities like New Orleans or Las Vegas because they wanted to do it in a city where someone might go on vacation anyway. And I think part of it was because especially in the older arena football days, and even to an extent you'll see it now as games start happening, some arenas and some cities fill up their arena better than others. And I think the intent of having this destination game was if you could get fans to kind of be like, well, I'm going to go to the Arena Bowl this year, you were kind of hoping to get kind of this almost convention of arena football fans in one place for the game and to try and maximize the potential for sellouts, that sort of stuff for the Arena Bowl. Well, Coffee here, I mean, he volunteered that information that maybe the league is looking at Atlantic City doing that, going back to something. Now, I think he was just kind of shooting off the cuff. I don't know if there's been any real discussions on that. But of all the cities in the Arena Football League currently, I would say that Atlantic City is the one that, city-wise, is the most something that you would have as like a destination, kind of a vacation spot, especially right along the beach. The Arena Bowl happens during the summer. It could be really cool. Now, where you're going to run into some issues, and maybe the Arena Football League doesn't see this as much of an issue, is the arena only has 10,000 tickets, 10,000 seats. Doesn't really have like luxury boxes or anything like that you can try and sell out. So if that's an idea they want to go with, a lot of it is based on, what's the atmosphere in the building like. I mean, I still think it's one of the most, just from a visual perspective, one of the most beautiful buildings in the league by far. And just, I want to see a game there because I just want to be in something that cool and interesting looking. And if you haven't looked at images of it yet, I would highly recommend you do so. I don't know if they have any ways of trying to increase the capacity, like if they could put risers on the stage or something like that to try and increase capacity for the, for an arena football game. But it's an interesting premise. I don't know if we'll go there because, again, I mean, when they did it in New Orleans and Las Vegas, the idea was you had at least a 15,000, 20,000 seat arena you could fill up to try and get for the Arena Bowl there. So it's an interesting premise as far as where things were going with that. And I like that part of the discussion. Now, I had a really cool opportunity last week. I've been, as much as I've been doing research for the show and talking with people and getting things together, I had the opportunity to actually go to the Destroyers' offices down in downtown Columbus. Now, kind of giving everybody just an idea of what these types of meetings are like. It wasn't an opportunity for me to sit there and, I mean, to an extent, it was an opportunity for me to sit there and grill them with questions, but it wasn't just, hey, you tell me everything and then I'll go and share it with listeners. A lot of it was providing background, which is me kind of understanding where the team's at, how things are being done, getting to know some of the people so that we can, when I speak to you guys, I've got some understanding, some background ideas on what's happening. And there are things I can share from what happened in our discussions. Because, again, not sure how familiar everybody is with journalism who listens to the show, but there's certain times that if things are off the record, I mean, they're off the record. You don't take something somebody said off the record, then share it with the world. It's not how things are done. So, but it was a good meeting. I got a really good sense of some things that kind of blew my mind a little bit, just in terms of it's not what I expected. First off, and I'm not going to say where the offices are because I don't know. I don't think they make it. I think they decided not to make it public for a reason. But when looking at things like this, I mean, there's the possibility always that a team would be like, hey, let's put it in an office park, or let's put it in like one of those offices where you rent it and everything's already set up and ready to go. That's not what they did. They picked a place in downtown Columbus where they could kind of build out their own place, renovate the offices that were there, make it their own space. And it definitely had, it's funny that this happened because I was listening, the phrase that the team COO used when I walked in is that we view this as a 31-year-old startup, which is really funny because on the Arena AFL Tonight podcast, they had discussed they had a really interesting conversation with the president of the league, which I would highly recommend you go listen to. But they had a really cool conversation, and something he mentioned that same phrase, the idea that we're a 31-year-old startup. And so when I was talking with Rich Whitmire there, the CEO of the Destroyers, he said, that's kind of where we are as a startup. And when you walked into the offices, it was that way. I mean, half of it looked one way. He said that's the part that's kind of the way we want it to be. Another whole half of the office wasn't how they wanted it to be yet. And I mean, it's not like it's an office like one room. It's a business office. I think they had 4 or 5 different offices around and some open spaces and whatnot. But little things like there was no trash cans yet. Someone pointed out to me that the copier had arrived yesterday and they were still figuring out how to work it yet. So if you've ever worked in an office, you know that everybody's trying to always figure out the copier. But those aspects were really interesting. Kind of walking around him and discussing, well, we think this area is going to be this. We think this area is going to be kind of a conference room, and this is going to be a different kind of office, and just saw some cool, just getting that sense of, these are how things are being done. Like, I know a lot of people this week got their phone calls for making, getting their season tickets. Well, it's not like this was an office staffed with 50 people, folks. I walked in and there were, a few people, just a small handful of people sitting at essentially little pop-up tables with their laptops sitting on them, and they were sitting on folding chairs getting things done. I think one or two people had like office-y chairs, but I mean, again, it was very much, okay, we're going to pop this thing up. We're going to start building a football team. And it was just kind of a crazed experience in terms of, yeah, they're really throwing this thing together in terms of this is a startup. This is new. Now, when you say startup, there's a lot of things that come to mind, and part of it being unfinished offices and, trying to just get the work done that you can get done. The thing that I want to stress, though, and this is part of what really impressed me while I was there, was we had conversations about what the team was going to be doing in terms of different facets. The one I will use as an example, the one I'm the most free to speak about, is how they're going to set up to do practices. Because one thing I asked when I was in the office was, okay, so is the coach going to be here or what's going to be happening? And the intention was the offices downtown were purely business offices. It was for sponsorships, ticketing, all that good kind of stuff. All the stuff that makes money for the team. And the discussion he had with me was, well, Dominic, the head of football operations, he'll be in and out of here. But all the football stuff, the coaches' offices, the offices for the other guys, are going to be up at the Bo Jackson facility. And I was like, oh, okay, so they're going to have offices up there? Because if you guys have looked at the Bo Jackson facilities stuff online, like I have when they announced they were doing the tryouts there, it's a really cool setup where they've got kind of this air-inflated dome, where they have kind of a baseball field and a good chunk of a football field, almost perfect for arena football. A little bit bigger than an arena football field, but not by much. And the intent is that it's somewhere that if either you want to get better at sports, or you got a kid who's trying to get better, or you got athletes who are trying to train but they need somewhere to train in the off season, the idea is they can go up there and work out and get it done. Well, the Destroyers obviously did their tryout there. They did the tryout for the Captain Destroyer there, and to my understanding, it is a bit of a partnership being worked out with them, where the team is making investments in kind of building out an actual practice facility that will be in partnership with the Bo Jackson facility. They're adding some things to it that the Bo Jackson people would love to have at their facility, and they're making some, and they're getting to do practices there because of it. And I was impressed, because when you talk about arena football and indoor football, I've heard the same interviews you have with guys who are retired or whatnot. And they talked about, well, we practice outside on like high school fields, or we did this or we did that. And I know that the old Destroyers, I think they practiced at this an indoor soccer thing that was down in Obetz. And the idea that there was actually going to be a facility this is where the Destroyers are going to train, is impressive to me. Between the discussion of the renovation of the offices and other discussions between advertising, other business things that were going to be happening, the thing that really set my mind to rest was there's a significant investment here for the long term. This is not a fly-by-night operation. And there's two other things I kind of want to tie into that. Again, the AFL Tonight show that did their podcast, something that their commissioner said on their show, and I'm not going to quote it correctly, or the president of the AFL said, I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but he stated that, we're aware of the perception of us in a lot of markets where the idea is, oh, there was an arena football team here, they were here for a couple of years and then things shut down. Or they were here and things weren't done professionally, then it was gone. And there is a definite decision to get away from that. To not be, to definitely have these professional organizations set up that are ready for the long term. And today of all days, I see there being a big separation there, because the Alliance of American Football today, which regrettably for anybody who was associated with it or played or worked for them, announced they were ceasing operations. They didn't finish a full season. They never got to their playoffs. And in reading stuff, apparently the plan for them was always to, after being around for 2 or 3 years, they were going to approach the NFL about trying to have this partnership, almost a minor league partnership. And then the man who came in and supposedly tried to save it, Tom Dundon, pushed for getting that much quicker, pushed for having that within days. And the NFL, the NFL Players Association, was in no rush to make that happen, because they had many questions and many concerns about player welfare and healthcare in comparison to what they were getting in the NFL, and a lot of concerns. But the main question I had was, wait, so you needed Tom Dundon to come in to give you a cash infusion to keep this league going when your plan was for it to go 2 or 3 years? How were you not ready to make this push? And they weren't. And the thing I can tell you, the biggest thing I can tell you after having the meetings with the folks at the Destroyers, and there's going to be other stuff come out of it, maybe other interviews in the future and other things as part of it, is that there is a real commitment. There's a real commitment on behalf of the Arena Football League, who is, as far as the public faces, when we talk about owners in the Arena Football League right now, it's monumental. So Ted Leonsis, it's Trifecta with Ron Jaworski and the ownerships in that. And there is a long-term commitment to what's happening with arena football. And it's exciting. It really should be exciting for a lot of fans, because when the Destroyers were here before, I believe the people who owned the Destroyers, Jim Renacci and the Columbus Blue Jackets ownership, were committed to making it work as a product, and they were willing to put money into it and then keep things going. But that wasn't true of every owner around the league. You had teams that might fold, that might make it, that might not, and there just wasn't that stability. And that's what the Arena Football League is planning on building. They're like, we're starting up. And the other cool thing is, using that terminology of a startup, for those of you who don't have a business background, there's one thing a startup is almost destined to do in its first few years, which is lose money, because you're growing, you're expanding, you have to spend money to get out into the market, to create a customer base, to do all those sorts of things. So the fact that their mindset is, we're not going to come in and turn a profit right away. We're not going to come in and boom, overnight we're a huge success. Now, obviously they want to have success. They want to sell a bunch of tickets. They want people to watch the games. They want people to be really engaged. Obviously they want that. But as a fan, what this allows me to do is allows me to say, hey, I can buy into this league because these guys are here. These guys are going to make things happen. And that was the other thing. Talking with Rich Whitmire there and talking with Jeff Elston, who's their communications guy down in the offices there. both of these guys have sports backgrounds. These aren't just, somebody in Columbus was rich and wanted a team and they hired these guys who'd worked for them before. These are guys who have worked in professional sports. Sharing a quick story from my time covering with the Columbus Blue Jackets. There was actually a gentleman who was hired from, if you're not familiar with the Columbus Blue Jackets, the ownership there also owns Worthington Industries, which is a manufacturer in Columbus. They make a lot of steel parts and do different things like that. But machinery, those types of things. Well, at one point, the owner of the Blue Jackets essentially got a guy who had worked in Worthington Industries for 20 years and got him over to Nationwide Arena and said, hey, you're running the Blue Jackets now. And all the guy knew about hockey is that his son played it. And that tells you all you need to know about why the Blue Jackets were bad for so long until they got real hockey people involved. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily Rich and Jeff are the biggest football people in the world, but they are sports people. I sat there and these guys told me stories about their times. I mean, Jeff has worked up in Cleveland for the Dan Gilbert group, as far as between the Monsters, around the Cavs a little bit, but he was telling me sports stories. He was telling stories. And Rich was telling stories about his time working for different NBA teams, which is kind of his information. And he was telling, one of the stories he was talking about that was a real encouragement was that he was a big part of when the Hornets moved from Charlotte to New Orleans. And I'm not big on franchises moving myself, but it's obviously that's not, Rich didn't make that decision, but he knew the idea of, okay, I'm taking a team into a brand new market and I'm going to try and grow it. So it's encouraging. It's very encouraging to see where that's going, to get a real sense of the team and the league. And there's going to be more information coming out of that as we go forward, as far as, just information from that day. And I mean, I will be honest with you guys. I asked a lot of the questions people are still asking. TV deals. Can I see the uniforms? Can we do this? And there's a lot of things they couldn't tell me, which is fine. I mean, things are still getting figured out. If you're familiar with how sports business works, the Columbus Crew recently, when they started their new season, it wasn't confirmed that they were going to be on Fox Sports Ohio as far as their TV deal until I think a week or so, or maybe 2 weeks before the first game. So, I mean, some of the times in sports, these deals come together late, and that's fine. So that's probably why a lot of things couldn't be told to me, because nothing was solidified. And even if it was, whether I'd been at liberty to disclose it, who knows? But it was a great time. It allows me to be really encouraged about the league, because for those of you listening to the show right now, I'm an independent guy. I am not, other than them inviting me in to talk about stuff, I don't really have much in the way of connection with these guys. I get to say what I want to say about stuff, which is very cool, because it allows me to really look at it from a fan's perspective and say, why do I feel good about this, or why should I not? So there's a lot of things to feel good about. Now, another reason to feel good this week, and Scott Soares, our friends over at AFL Fan Zone, who runs AFL Fan Zone, he shared with me a really cool podcast. This was published, I think, a couple years ago at this point. But it's from Tim Hanlon, a gentleman who makes a show called Good Seats Still Available, which, if you're a sports nerd, is a pretty fascinating show, because what he does is he finds people who are really knowledgeable, or maybe wrote a book about a part of, like, maybe a history, like the USFL or the AFL, or he finds things about like old defunct teams like the California Golden Seals, and he has someone come on and they tell him stories about the team, and they tell him about the history of the team and what happened and why it happened. Well, there was this really awesome 2-part episode, which I would highly recommend you go search for this on good. Again, the name of the podcast is Good Seats Still Available. I want to say it's episodes 41 and 42 are a 2-part interview with the founder of the AFL, Jim Foster, from his time growing up to how he developed the game to other things. But there's just a short snippet I want to play for you all, because it's interesting in our current context in the Arena Football League, what we're hearing from that. So I'll play that right now for you.
At the end of the year, we felt very good about where we're at. Now, again, I'm getting a lot of calls from people who want to buy franchises. And I'm saying, we don't do that. What do you mean you don't do that? That's how you do it. I said, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to sell management rights to operate a team in a market. And actually, it really wasn't even supposed to be that way. We morphed into that, which I regret now. The original plan was to be straight subsidiary-operated teams like the first year, where they had their own coach, own manager. They were like being subsidiaries, branch offices of IBM. And they compete against each other, just like salesmen compete in each branch to sell the most IBM computers or printers or whatever. These guys were competing on the field against each other, and the more they put one, the more they made. And it was a very strong concept that did work, and it worked well. I will tell you, to this day, the best season of arena football was the first year in terms of the way it operated, because we did not have owners involved. And I know there's probably people out there that might hear this that cringe when I say that, but we ran it like a business. We did not have a doctor in, Topeka, or a dentist in Dallas, or a ball bearing manufacturer in Birmingham that said, "No, this is how I'm going to do it." Because George Hallis said it so well before Congress in the early '60s, when there was some discussion about antitrust with the NFL. And he said, a league is only as good as its weakest league. And it is so absolutely true. It's like the anthem to what can go wrong with sports leagues. And, it's a creeping crowd. If you get 3 or 4 bad owners, even 1 or 2 sometimes, they can ruin an otherwise good league. And in essence, go back to the USFL. That's what happened. Go back to the World Football League. That's what happened. You could go to a lot of other leagues and other sports. And I did not want that to happen. And that's why I stuck by my guns.
So I wanted to play that clip, I think, for some pretty obvious reasons when you listen to everything, in that the Arena Football League is going back to this single entity concept of one, kind of the AFL owns everything, and if you want to invest or if you want to operate a team, you can, but you're investing in the league, and the teams are owned by the league itself. And to my understanding of things, from what I've heard from people, even the teams that are thought of as being owned by certain groups, like the Philadelphia Soul, the Washington Valor, all that, essentially at this point they are being incorporated back into a structure where they're being owned by the Arena Football League. So it's cool. It is very cool to see that the league is kind of going back to the original vision that Foster had all those years ago. And I don't think it was intentionally so, because every time I've heard it referenced by people in the Arena Football League, they reference the MLS model, whereas maybe the idea is we should be going back to the original Arena Football League model. So I thought that was really cool. It was a neat moment of clarity when that happened, that what the league is going to now is what Jim Foster always intended. This idea that a central league can decide what are the best markets. And his reference is, a dentist in Topeka or whatever. And that's smart to say, this is the right market. Now, if somebody local who's the right kind of person, we want them to manage it, that's fine. But in my visit with the Destroyers, that what they did was the league decided Columbus is a good market. We want a team in Columbus. And then what did they do? They went and they got good quality professional people who have experience all over the country. To my understanding, Rich, the COO, he's, other than maybe passing through in the airport or something, he'd never really spent any real time in Columbus. Now he's here. He's enjoying the city. He thinks it's a great place, and he can see the allure of Columbus. But he's got a lot of professional sports experience, so he can do that. We bring in, our head coach, Matt Salk. Matt Salk, other than maybe coming to Columbus to play some arena football games, I don't think he had much of a real tie to the Columbus area ever before this. But you know what? He's a great football coach. Let's bring him in. Let's get the right professional people to do what we want to do. And that's really what is really great about where the Arena Football League is heading right now, is that that's where we're at. Now, if things start going sideways, I'm going to be straight with you guys. I know I've been very rose-colored glasses on these shows, and maybe some people think I'm being too optimistic about where things are going. But it's because I'm seeing really good signs, and I'm talking with people who are intelligent and have a pretty good sense of what's going on. One thing I forgot to mention from the meeting that I wanted to mention because I thought it was cool. If you go back to some of the earlier episodes of the show, we talk about the team switching to this black and silver or white kind of color scheme. And the theory I threw out at the time was I thought the reason they were doing it was because it did two things. It made them a unique color scheme in the Arena Football League, but it also made them a unique color scheme in the Columbus market. none of the other major teams has that same color scheme. And when I was talking with them, that was essentially confirmed. They told me they looked at things, and there was a concern about, would you look too much like this or too much like that, and we really want to be our own thing. And it was cool, and that's part of what confirms in my mind, okay, smart people are leading this because they're making decisions that are intelligent, making decisions that I could from the outside say, hey, this may be the way you want to do things. So I'm really excited about where the Destroyers are going, where the league is going. We're coming up on training camp. I hope you're getting excited as I am, because this is a good time. Single game tickets are on sale. Season tickets are on sale. Go get stuff. Go to games. I'm excited. I'm already going to be at a few. That's for sure. Being a father may prevent me from being at all of them, because you got to be a good father at the end of the day. But I'm excited, guys. I cannot wait to see you there. Thank you for listening to Battle Stations.